Hey, what's up all you burners out there? This is Weedman420 with the Weedman420 Chronicles podcast. How's my burners doing out there today? Super stoked today. We got our first guest on. We've been talking with him the last couple weeks about getting him on the show, and his name is David Silverberg. And he has been working in journalism since 1998. And he first got published in the Toronto Star. And he's also written for the Washington Post, BBC News, Vice, which I like Vice a lot, BuzzFeed, one of my favorite magazines, which I've been reading since the early 90s, High Times, and one of the strains that I smoked from a friend of mine who got in there was called, in 1994, it was called Doctor Who's, and he was in High Times, and I'm so stoked that he writes for them. We also got the Globe Mail, Metro, Technicana, Canadian Business News, Life and Company Magazine. Damn, David, holy shit. Pharmacy Times, alumni publications. He also represents Yale, Princeton, Georgia Tech, University of Michigan, and many more. Also, David is an editor of the Medical Marijuana Review for 2 years. He's written for Cannabis for BBC News, Vice, the Global Mail, PROHBTD, Canvas Me, Canadian Jewish News, Canadian Producer, and many more. What's also cool is he's also an artist director for Toronto Poetry Slam, a 12-year-old spoken word series in Toronto. I love spoken word series. One of my favorite guys, David, is Henry Rollins, and he does a lot of cool spoken words.
Oh, he's fantastic.
Nice. I have a signed autograph poster from him on his 40th birthday. That's how old I am. He has brought his poetry to stages all over the world, including Vancouver, Montreal, Berlin, London, UK, and Paris. He's also got a new book that I want to plug for him. It's a poetry book, if you guys are into poetry, As Close to the Edge Without Going Over. Just real quick before we move on, David, just tell us a little bit about your book, your new poetry book you came out with.
Sure. It's actually my first poetry collection that has an ISBN number, and it is a book of science fiction poetry. So I've long been a fan of science fiction films and books, and I thought, how can I maybe blend my love of science fiction and surrealism and spec art into my love of spoken word and poetry. So publisher out of Peterborough, Ontario, called Cheesy, decided to take a chance on this kind of new type of poetry that I was playing with, and they thankfully worked with me on it. I actually have a smattering of horror in there too. I actually tried to create a poem that would bring a bit of terror to the readers rather than trying to be funny or comical about horror, and hopefully people dig it.
That sounds awesome. I love sci-fi, so I have to check that out.
Yeah. Are you a Star Wars fan?
Not so much Star Wars. I'm a bit more of more science fiction novels and short stories. One of my favorite authors is a guy named Harlan Ellison, who passed away last year, and I've been voraciously reading his stuff for years, including Ray Bradbury and Kurt Vonnegut, and Salman Rushdie, which has that kind of magic realism in it. That's not hard sci-fi, but it has that kind of magic-ness to it that I really like about his work. And so, probably science fiction-wise, more fan of like Blade Runner, those kind of movies.
Okay.
Oh yeah, I love me some Blade Runner.
Yeah, you can't go wrong with it.
Yeah,
That's some good shit.
Yeah, that's some awesome stuff, David, right there. So I'm going to ask the first question, and pretty psyched again, man. So seeing as you've been writing on cannabis for a substantial amount of time, what's been the biggest change you've noticed as cannabis slowly becomes more accepted?
Definitely that the stigma is wearing off. I remember maybe 10 years ago being nervous about smoking a joint on Yonge Street, our big kind of a street here in Toronto, and, looking over my back to see if, cops would be noticing the smell, or even if people would be giving me the stink eye. And that's just really gone away. Now I feel so comfortable smoking or consuming cannabis with friends in a park or an area, and not facing that stigma. And I think that's really an undervalued part of the legal system here in Canada, and also just how society is turning towards cannabis as both a medication and also as a lifestyle choice. And I think there's less anxiety about being upfront about your cannabis use. Let's say going on a first date, talking to employees, your fellow colleagues or fellow journalists in the space. There's people like to have drinks after work. Now you can have a joint after work, or hit your vape after work, and it's not going to give you that feeling of social awkwardness or anxiety that I think it might have happened a few years ago. Also, what I think has really been cool to watch is how the science has advanced. I just spoke to Dr. Mark Ware, who's a Montreal researcher who's a specialist in chronic pain and in cannabis, for an article I'm doing, and he's now the chief medical officer at Canopy, one of our biggest licensed producers here. And he told me that he'll be embarking on a year-long study on how CBD we could help hockey retirees, NHL retirees with post-concussion symptoms. And I think that kind of announcement would have been unthinkable, undoable like 5-10 years ago because of, how there used to be so much bureaucratic red tape to go through getting cannabis for research purposes. But, these kinds of restrictions in Canada are loosening, and that's really encouraging for me to see, especially as someone writing about a lot of cannabis research and cannabis science.
Yeah,
That's
on
awesome.
The first part that you hit on, I definitely noticed the stigma changing, like here in Chicago a little bit. But I think it's mostly with like the young crowd that we see it. I think like maybe like 45-year-olds and below are slowly starting to accept it more. But like with the older crowd, it's still a little stigmatized. But I can definitely see that change that you're talking about happening here a lot more.
I've noticed
Yeah,
it.
and I think with the older crowd, I'm feeling that a bit too. And like I'm using my parents as an example. They grew up in an era where Just Say No ads were all across television, and of course they heard about the drug war that the U.S. was fighting. That kind of leaked into, of course, Canadian politics, especially when we had the Stephen Harper, aka conservative government, in our country, as opposed to the more liberal government we have now. And I've been trying to convince them about trying marijuana for the first time. They are resisting. They don't want their perceptions changed. And I think my dad is quite sensitive to all substances, including alcohol. So he's a bit of a lost cause. But I'm still trying to convince my mom to rethink how she was taught about cannabis and about the propaganda that you spoke about on your last episode that has really brainwashed a lot of older Canadians and older Americans.
Yeah, we just had it legalized here yesterday. Not fully yet, still got to get signed off by the governor, but we're getting there.
Whoa.
One step closer.
And in the courtroom there was actually, what was it, who was it, like a representative or someone actually brought out the egg in the frying pan and cracked the egg in the frying pan and said, "This is your brain on drugs."
So that was a very old school approach.
Just very, very old school, like old ads you would see. So
I remember those ads. I was around. I've been around a long time.
Yeah, I mean, we even have some hanging down here in our little studio, like the Reefer Madness, Adults Only, Public Enemy #1, Weird Orgy, Wild Parties, like weird shit like that. It's just, it's good to see that that's kind of turning around a little bit.
Slowly but surely.
Yeah, and definitely I'd say more, sentiment among people than I maybe do see it coming from marketing or government policy, but hopefully that'll change too.
You know what I've noticed? The older generation. I'm an older generation. I was born in '72, and Dov says I'm really old. But I notice a lot of the older generation are accepting more to edibles than they are to flower or cartridges or dabs. They're really in tune to doing edibles, and Mrs. Weedman makes a phenomenal edible and brings them and shows them to people, and it's being more accepted on the older generation, the 40, 50 and up. Accepting edibles as a start point, which I think is really good.
Yeah, and I've seen that too, except the only problem in Canada right now is that while we legalize flower and bud in October, edibles will only be legalized in late September 2019 here in Canada. So there's that delay. I think Canada want to roll it out in stages, so edibles and concentrates will be legal in October, but illegal dispensaries that we have in Toronto, of which there are still many operating, have been, selling Rice Krispie Squares and chocolate bars and shadow bars.
Oh, really?
So
they're just
at least a few years.
They're just doing it under the table? That's crazy.
Yeah, it's actually kind of crazy. They're getting raided, they're getting shut down, and then the next day they're back up.
Oh my God.
Wow, they're moving quick.
Probably a drop in the bucket compared to how much they make every day.
Oh, yeah.
People streaming in, but there seem to be just popping up right after they get raided.
That's crazy.
All right, so our next question for you is, so we talk a lot about like our listeners doing their own research besides what we preach to them in our episodes. But with like big pharma and big tobacco out there and just all the different articles that are being sent and research being done, it's kind of hard to find stuff you could trust and find good articles out there that you should be reading to get to know marijuana and how to use cannabis. So what would be like some tips and techniques you could give our listeners to weed out those false articles and all that misinformation to get trustworthy sources that they can actually learn from?
Yeah, so what kind of has been interesting to see in Canada and the U.S. is the rise of cannabis journalism and the rise of a lot of investigative reporting being done on the business of cannabis, on the science of it, on the lifestyle trends of it. And I think what will help a lot of your listeners is recognizing the sources that you can trust. So in Canada, we have a lot of newspapers, like the Globe and Mail and the National Post are kind of big national papers that are getting, neck deep into cannabis journalism now, often with a paywall section of their site launching in October to fund a lot of these new journalists that they're hiring. And I think when it comes to, the Globe and Mail, I would say maybe is analogous to the Washington Post. And, of course, there's lots of fact-checking and a lot of resources being poured into these sections. So I think if anything comes out of one of those big papers in terms of investigation or revealing a certain study, those sources can be trusted. It's some of the more smaller players that might not have those fact-checking resources that you have to be a bit wary about, that might not have that legacy brand of the Globe and Mail or National Post or Washington Post, but still be passionate about obviously covering the cannabis space. They might have great intentions and honest will towards spreading the word about cannabis, but you have to be a bit careful as a reader of ensuring that they are coming from a place of bias, of propaganda for the sake of spreading the good word about the plant and ensure that they also are balanced. You really got to track back to the original source of a news tip or a news article that you read. That's what we were talking in journalism school when I went to Ryerson here in Toronto. There's an original source for every bit of news, whether that's an eyewitness account, a press release, a document someone is basing a report on. Don't just rely on someone's claim as being truthful, which is rampant throughout the cannabis space, especially with a lot of claims being made about CBD, a lot of claims being made about certain strains and about certain oils. These are all very highfalutin kind of claims being made by companies and LPs and even periphery companies, but they really have to be taken more as marketing claims than as factual claims. So that I think would be my recommendation. The other one tip I would have, and this might be difficult for some people to do, but try to consult with physicians and specialists and researchers who've been working with cannabis for a while. I know that's not easily accessible to everyone. Not everyone's a journalist who can have access to researchers and specialists, but if you know a friend of a friend who knows a physician or who knows a researcher working at a university who knows the space well, maybe has been studying how cannabis can help with pain or how cannabis can help with sleeplessness, get the info from that source rather than maybe the press release or the article that comes later, because even having a casual conversation on LinkedIn or maybe even on Twitter DMs or in person at a business conference like MJBiz can really go a long way to helping you feel more reassured about the accuracy of information about that cannabis topic that you're interested in than reading dozens of articles with varying claims about it.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think with like the physician thing that you said, I don't know if you have these anywhere by you, but I've been seeing by us a lot of like offices, like doctors' offices open up and like physician offices, and they're strictly for like getting you your medical card and to walk you through like the whole process. And I think they probably teach you along the way too, but we literally have offices opening up that are literally for medical marijuana, so that's pretty interesting.
Those can't be promoted, I think, under the Cannabis Act restrictions, which are very heavy-handed on marketing in Canada, which something we can also talk about. But I have noticed more physicians being educated about cannabis by going to conferences and actually having physician-backed kind of seminars and talks about what physicians should know about cannabis. So I think there's, like, within the physician world, in Canada at least, I think there's some inner physician kind of education happening among their space and their own kind of niche conferences.
That's good to hear, because I feel like a lot of physicians could still be pushing people away because that information they don't have, and they just don't know how to actually like prescribe it to someone, like the amount to take or how to like use it. So that's good news.
One fact about that's a little upsetting that I learned from actually that same Dr. Mark Ware from McGill is that when he was in medical school, they did not teach about the endocannabinoid system within people's bodies, which is goes beyond cannabis. It really goes towards tempering a lot of different kind of emotions, and a lot of illnesses around that, and pretty much as part of our physiological system. But he says that is changing a bit more, but there are still so many doctors who just don't know the cannabinoid system, and so it doesn't really come from a place of ill will, more of a place of ignorance that physicians are a little behind, especially the older ones, in learning about how cannabis affects the body.
Do you think that the restrictions Canada puts on cannabis kind of affects those doctors in their learning process?
Oh, definitely. I think some of the marketing restrictions means that, you know, we're not being made aware of all the fantastic kind of health benefits that cannabis can provide.
Right.
Because I actually have not seen any TV ads, of course, that those are restricted. There's no print ads being made available yet. There's actually a restriction even in Quebec where they can't have any, I think they call it something like cannabis-related paraphernalia, which includes Bob Marley shirts, that classic Bob Marley shirt. Those are being banned in Quebec of all provinces for some reason, which is strange because Montreal is such a fun city, but for cannabis, Quebec seems to have a bit more of a heavy hand on marketing than any other province in Canada, which is a bit strange. So I think if those restrictions get loosened, and perhaps there can even be more educational brochures, you know, inserted even into our mainstream papers or magazines that can, you know, eventually reach physicians or friends of physicians, and I think that can go a long way.
Mm-hmm. An educational podcast would be something smart.
Yeah, it would be.
I wish someone would think of that.
I wonder who's doing that right now.
Oh, man.
Hey, we're going to go on to the next question. You've written a ton of articles, as your bio says, and some of the articles I've read are amazing. When you create your articles, have you been given freedoms to discuss the topics however you want, or the companies or the articles you're writing for, are they guiding you your research, or do you have ultimate freedom how you want to write?
Yeah, I pretty much have all the freedom I have to write about this. The work I've done for a licensed producer or two, a company based here in Canada, which I can't name under an NDA, has been pretty flexible in allowing me to write about the topics that I've been assigned. So I've written kind of more one-on-one blog posts, like what are terpenes, what is THC, how do you use a grinder even was one article I wrote about, or what happens when you ingest edibles compared to smoking a joint, what happens to your body. You know, there's been no restriction to write this in a certain way or to insert the brand into the article. I think more brands than not want to get away from rah, we're so great, to let's educate our users, because there's so many consumers in Canada who don't know what terpenes are, they don't even know what CBD can do compared to THC. So I think a lot of LPs and a lot of educational companies like Cannabis MedTech, who I mainly write for as well, want to get into the education space, because I think that's the space that is going to be most competitive in Canada, as opposed to look at my strain, look at my new, you know, pack of pre-rolls, look how great we are. That's, you know, there's 176 licensed producers in Canada right now, with many applicants still in the queue. So, you know, how will that 176 stand out from the next? Might be through branding, sure, but there's so many restrictions on branding. You can't even have a package with your kind of logo in it. You have the most bland packaging imaginable, kind of like cigarettes here in Canada as well, to not attract, you know, all those kids who are attracted by branding packages, I guess.
Yeah, it's not the content, it's the packaging.
So really I can stand out to the educational piece, and luckily I've been given the freedom to write about what I want, as long as I'm writing accurate information and backing it up with links or interviews.
Yeah, I'm glad you touched on that, because a couple of our episodes, you know, we've talked about terpenes, we've talked about CBD, we've talked about a lot of the stuff that you just mentioned, and trying to educate the masses on that, because there is a lot of misinformation, and you're guided with your research that you're talking about here is exactly in our wheelhouse of where we're at. So.
Yeah, exactly. I think that'll be an important key for not just Canada, but for, you know, global audiences who might be interested in learning about cannabis for the first time. Because I think what we take for granted sometimes, me, you, and everyone else who's been in the space for a while, that we know this kind of backwards and forwards with the back of our hand. But there's so many people who are just getting into cannabis for the first time after years of maybe seeing it as something, you know, immoral or illegal to try. And I think those people are the ones that are kind of been sometimes underserved by cannabis journalism, that, you know, they need those 101 articles as much as anyone else.
Yeah, definitely.
True. All right, David, I'm taking the next question. Shawty over here. So, you know, with your writing and not just your articles, but your poetry too, I mean, there's always something that you have to, like, get in the right mindset and get your creativity going. And I know that when I smoke, I mean, depending on what I smoke, there's just a million thoughts that could run through your head, and you're like, oh, I gotta write this down, or I gotta do this right now, because it's just getting your mind going. Has cannabis played that creativity part in your writing, you know, not just in journalism, but I mean in your poetry too? Like, has that have you gotten to the right mindset when you smoke?
Yeah, so sometimes when I consume cannabis, I do have a bit more of an expanded creative mindscape of where certain, you know, poems can go, or where certain, you know, phrases can even go, as maybe adding a bit of humor where it might not have in a more serious poem. But I do find that I'm a better editor than I am a writer when I consume cannabis.
Interesting.
I don't really like to write, you know, first drafts on cannabis. More like I like to
read it after,
and then maybe look at it as an editor, kind of when I'm influenced, because I can sometimes see the macro view of, like, am I really finding the right message or the right theme here, or am I just kind of stringing along some really pretty phrases to really no end. But also cannabis can give me that micro view of, like, you know, did I use the right word here? Did I use too much repetition? Sometimes those things will be flushed out a bit more after I've smoked than maybe when I've been sober, and I think that's when I feel more comfortable with creative expression, and cannabis is when I kind of look over that shitty first draft, as and Lamont calls it, and see how can I polish this turd to be a bit more for both me and audiences. And one thing I definitely don't do is I never consume cannabis when I begin to perform, when I'm about to perform a poem, because you know, after all years, I still get pasties, I still get forgetful lines that I've memorized, and I do memorize most of my poems. So I definitely always smoke after I perform and never before.
I feel that definitely.
Yeah.
When you smoke, when you perform, do you prefer a sativa or an indica?
He doesn't.
Okay, has he not?
Oh.
I'm a bit more a fan of sativas and hybrids than I am with indicas. So yeah, I try to find sativas when I can. With edibles too, same thing with edibles. Usually try to find sativa infused edibles when I can.
Yeah.
Nice.
So are you like what do you use cannabis for, since we're talking about it? Do you use it medically at all, or do you just use it recreationally?
I'll be honest, I have no medical conditions other than tinnitus that really require any kind of intervention. And tinnitus, as you know, is the ringing of the ears that really cannabis can't help with. Only a white noise machine can really help with at night for that kind of ailment, and not going to you know, death metal concerts, which I never have. Maybe I meant to one too many Red Hot Chili Pepper concerts when I was young.
Nice.
I definitely do it socially among our poetry community in Canada. It's, I think, a bit more popular than alcohol.
That's awesome.
Maybe because we have more people in our community that have either been through the program, AA, or identify as Muslim, and of course Muslim communities don't allow alcohol in their space, so cannabis is usually the best option for them after a long night of poetry slamming or attending a poetry slam. And I also enjoy solo. I definitely, you know, get a lot of value out of watching sports. I'm a big NBA fan, so sometimes I'm sparking up before every Raptors game.
How crazy did you go last night?
Yeah, you know, the finals is definitely exciting me, and getting my friends interested in smoking at halftime when they're watching at a bar and stuff to kind of get back into it. Sometimes with me in sports, I'm not sure if any of you are huge sports fans, but sometimes when I smoke and then watch sports, I sometimes see a bit of the strategy, see a bit of the nuances that a coach might throw in that I might not have seen if I was sober. Maybe this is me reading into being high in my relationship with sports, but sometimes I see the X's and O's a bit more when I'm under the influence than I do normally.
Yeah, definitely. I think I'm a coach when I smoke.
I agree. I'm a big baseball watcher, and when I smoke, just the way that watching pitching is just like an art form. How you can throw the ball to the glove and how it breaks. It's just one of the best. I absolutely agree with you on that. The sequence of everything.
Sometimes I actually like playing sports under the influence. It makes my body a bit more looser, makes me a bit more creative with some of the ideas I might have as a basketball player, or I also play tennis too pretty often.
Oh, nice. You gonna smoke a lot after Kawhi leaves Toronto this offseason?
That is true. There will be lots of that. But, you know, he's done so much already for our city that I got no ill will towards.
Yeah, you've got my support. I want Toronto to win these finals.
Yeah, I'm
so.
rooting for you up there, David.
Hopefully by
Absolutely.
the time it airs, we'll be up 3-0.
Yeah, let's hope so.
Yeah, Shawty just gave a frown face. I think she wants Golden State to win. Boo.
Terrible.
I don't know. I like Steph Curry, but whatever. I'm on the bandwagon.
Steph Curry actually used to go to school in Toronto.
Oh, really?
Really?
His brother, Del Curry, was on the Raptors.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That's right.
And he met his wife, Aisha, through some friends in Toronto. Aisha's originally from Toronto as well.
Oh, interesting.
He's
Nice.
a traitor, then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are you liking Drake on the sideline, or what's up with that?
I'm loving the Drake on the sideline.
Yeah.
I kind of like it too.
Anything that gets in the head of the opponent that is not basketball related, I think benefits with us. Fun fact about actually me and Drake, with the poetry slam that I run, which is a competition where you get judges from the audience to score poems. We once want to do some celebrity judges, which is great. We got some local actors here and some broadcasters here from our news stations. But back in the day when Drake was on Degrassi, he wasn't that big, and so I called up CBC, which was airing Degrassi at the time, and said, "Can I get this actor, Aubrey Graham, who seems to be into poetry and rapping, to be a guest celebrity judge?" And I got his number, and I actually talked to him and just confirmed the details, probably around 10 years ago. And then on the night of the slam, he canceled and said he was dealing with a sick grandmother. Whether that was legit, or whether it was legit, sick grandmother, it does sound like something someone does make up when they are.
Yeah. A very last minute excuse.
It's a dog ate my homework excuse.
Drake to be a celebrity judge at our
That's so
small,
cool.
at that time, poetry slam.
That
That's
would've been
amazing.
awesome.
Wow.
Yeah.
Coming back to the questions, though, you do live in a fully recreational country, and looks like you've done research into the states in the U.S. that have legalized both medical and recreational cannabis. With all of your knowledge in these different types of legalization happening around, what's your ideal way of going about it, like bill, law, legislation-wise?
Well, I think Canada did go about it in the correct way in creating a task force maybe a year prior to legalization with all these different kind of players giving their input on what they should do. Because I think the government realized, hey, we don't know anything about cannabis. A lot of people in Canada have been studying and have been in the space for a while. Let's create a task force to get their input. So I think that was step one that they got right, and I really admire Canada for admitting that it didn't know anything about growing or about distribution or about the the application process. The one thing I think Ontario especially got wrong, and some other provinces got wrong too, is that they held a lottery once retail storefronts were going to be made available to give 25 licenses to retailers that wanted to, obviously run storefronts with cannabis that can only be bought through the Ontario Cannabis Store, by the way, too. But the problem with that is that it allowed anyone to put their name in the hat, meaning people who have never been involved in cannabis, people who have never been involved in retail, people who have never even smoked the plant or even seen the plant for the first time. They just saw, green money signs in their eyes when they realized they could be randomly picked out of this lottery. So 25 people were picked out of a lottery of around 8,000 applicants to open storefronts. And what I think was really bad about that was that people who've been entrenched in the system, who've been running dispensaries for years, got shut out of the retail opportunity. And people who have been real estate agents their whole lives, plumbers their whole lives, suddenly got licenses and didn't know what to do, so they started to work with cannabis consultants, with LPs like Tokyo Smoke and Canopy, and suddenly I think there was a bit of ill will towards the provincial governments for going about this route rather than kind of doing what Canada did, which was, consult with task forces, consult with people prior to legalization. I think what Ontario should have done is really not given it a chance, but actually look through applications rigorously to see whether the people given the opportunity to sell retail cannabis knew what they were doing, knew about the plant, and were actually educated about the plant. So that's, I think, step one of what I would like to see done better. And another thing that I think Canada got wrong, and I think this is maybe a personnel issue, is that Health Canada, our body that gives licenses to prospective LPs, has really been very, very slow in the process of giving those approvals to prospective licensed producers. Sometimes it can take up to 5 years from your first point of submission due to security clearances, personnel clearances. I know of one LP that was 90% of the way there to being a medical cannabis supplier 3 years ago, but one of the co-founders was found to have a criminal conviction in the past, maybe 2 decades ago, and nothing, massive. It wasn't like a B&E or assault. It was something maybe a bit more white-collar crimey. But Health Canada said, no, sorry, one of your co-founders is a criminal past. All this money you spent on security clearances for 4 years has been all for naught. We're not approving you at all.
Wow.
You're going to have to obviously not have that founder involved anymore if you want to reapply. And I think that stigmatization of ex-convicts or ex-criminals it's a North American problem now. It's not just an American problem. It's not just a Canadian problem. It's something I've seen in the U.S. as well. And the fact that these people can't be now involved in legal cannabis space and that Health Canada's being a bit heavy-handed with that, and I think that's something that Health Canada has to clear up, and especially those delays. And those delays are causing shortages all across Canada. In November, a month after we legalized, we had shortages in Alberta and Ontario, especially CBD products that the medical patients need. And so I think that's something that I would like to see cleared up. But that's, easier said than done. Health Canada has to hire more people, have to put more money into those officers to ensure that, the security clearances are okay, personnel is okay. But I would probably recommend that they not be so draconian about people with maybe criminal pasts getting into the space.
Yeah, I think one thing that Illinois is doing right is they're trying to get some of those people involved more, and they want to have the people that have been punished for marijuana crimes or just been hurt by the system, they want to have them actually have a chance to work in the industry, which I think is a really good part that they added to the bill, and I think a lot of states should follow suit with that. But I definitely agree. I've seen a lot of the same things that you spoke on happening here in the U.S., and I'm hoping that they can get their act together as well.
And kind of just riffing off the criminal thing I just mentioned, one thing that I think I would love to see in Canada is, amnesty for, all the thousands of people who have been convicted in Canada for cannabis-related convictions relating to possession. I think it's around 10,000 people in Ontario alone who could be given amnesty. It's still in the works, still causing a lot of controversy between more conservative politicians here and more liberal politicians here. And that's something I would also like to see come to pass, which I know is on top of mind for a lot of people who are still trying to find jobs with a cannabis possession conviction still on their record. And unfortunately, that is an also reported part of legalization. Is it's all great for us to get joints at the stores, but now people who have still those possession charges from 1985 can't even work at a pharmacy if they want. They have to really go through a lot of hoops and hurdles in order to even get a regular job based on that possession conviction.
Yeah,
that's a great point, David. The thing we're seeing here in Illinois is when we went medical in 2016, that no one can get involved. It was big money, $250,000 to get your license for a cultivation, just to get the application fee, and then it was $25,000 to put in for a dispensary license, and there was thousands of people that entered the game and gave people like us who were in the game back in the 80s and 90s not even a chance to get involved in any way possible. Like, we have an edible line, and it's a very good edible line that we can't even get into the market today because of the laws of the medical laws of Illinois, and even with the recreational laws, it won't be there for us. It's going to be so tight knit, and it's very disappointing and upsetting to people who've been in the game for a long time that can have product to help people medically give out to and sell a product, and we can't even do it here.
And another issue, I'm not sure how also it mirrors what's happening in the U.S., is that many Black Toronto residents are more likely to be arrested for cannabis possession than white residents. And even though more than 500,000 Canadians have criminal records relating to cannabis possession, many of those are from Indigenous and Black communities in Canada, which faces the same kind of racial disparities and issues that happen in the U.S. with a lot of stop and frisk happening to Black Canadians comparatively to white Canadians in our jails. being disproportionately filled with Indigenous and Black youth who have been convicted of just simple possession crimes, and that is also something that a lot of amnesty groups are working towards, pressuring the government to look at more closely.
Yeah, I really hope that changes, but I feel like it's going to be a long battle that I hope that they end up winning, but we're seeing the same things here, and the same arguments are being made. We got a letter in the mail actually the other day, and it was from like a group that was they were allowing recreation, but they wanted to make like DUI checkpoints, not even checkpoints, but just like DUI things for marijuana, which is understandable. But then also on all these flyers that they sent was to not have the amnesty and to not let any of these criminals get anything removed from their record. So even now, like as we just legalized it or are getting there, there's still people pushing out like pamphlets, and I'm sure these were sent to everyone in Illinois, trying to keep people from getting cleared of all these convictions that they have, and it's sad to see.
Yeah, that is really sad to see, especially because, it doesn't really hurt anyone. It's almost like a victimless crime,
Yeah.
victimless act to allow this kind of amnesty. It'll only give more opportunities to people who aren't violent criminals than not. So that does boggle my mind why they make that
It really does.
Yeah, that's crazy.
We got some story time here for you. We want to know what the best experience you've had thus far conducting cannabis journalism.
Yeah, I've thought about this for a bit, and I'll give you one of my earlier experiences. I'm not sure the word would be the best, but probably the word I would use is probably the most eye-opening story that I covered. One of my first articles for High Times was they wanted me to look at how we rolled out our medical program, our medical cannabis program, which, arrived years before we did legalization. And the issue with our medical program was that only the government was allowed to supply the cannabis to patients who had to apply to get this cannabis, and it was from a mine in Flin Flon, Manitoba, and to be honest, the government did not know how to grow cannabis. The rumors going around was that people from cancer patients to AIDS patients to epilepsy patients were getting swag, which we all know to be, very low quality cannabis filled with seeds and stems and dry bud that kind of just crumbles as soon as you try to roll it.
Oh, the
and I want
Reggie.
to know if these rumors were true. So I went to visit an AIDS patient in our gay neighborhood in Toronto, in the Church and Wellesley area, for those who know Toronto, and he showed me the cannabis that he got, and it was as bad as it was rumored to look, and we both shared a joint to see how it smelled, and it was very harsh on the throat, barely gave me much of a buzz, and he said he's been turning to the black market because he just knows that he needs a certain kind of weed in order to keep his food down as an AIDS patient who often has, been taking drugs that make him nauseous. And so that was really eye-opening to me that the government, sure, did great rolling out a medical program. I think that was a fantastic move by Canada, but they should have done a lot more research on A, how to grow cannabis, and B, really deferred the responsibility to those who know how to do it. BC, as we all know, BC Bud has been around for decades, and, if anyone knows how to grow high-quality cannabis, it would be those in British Columbia, and especially in Vancouver and sometimes in Victoria. So I think really the government should have been looking more towards the West Coast as a resource and a place to maybe even grow the bud than some dank mine in Manitoba farm town that sure was maybe heavily secured, had lots of rings of barbed wire around it, and maybe that's why they wanted that space because of how remote it was and as a deterrent to criminals, but it was not giving these patients what they needed, and I'm pretty proud of that article, that High Times audiences were able to see what was going on in Canada and realize the issues that we were going through, that it wasn't all rah-rah, let's go Canada with the med program, but you know what? You got to really shape up and learn how to grow bud cannabis because AIDS patients and cancer patients are not getting the medication they want. And imagine like if this happened with any other medication and people were not getting the right antidepressants, for instance, that were getting low quality antidepressants that were filled with well, maybe not stems and seeds, but whatever the equivalent would be in pills, that would, just make the experience so unfortunate for them.
Yeah,
The other kind of the more recent, kind of one of the more experiences I had covering cannabis was I went to almost like a Dragon's Den kind of pitch. Do you guys have Dragon's Den there? I think there's an American version, right? People pitch their startups to a bunch of judges.
Oh, yeah. We have
Shark
Shark
Tank.
We have Shark Tank here.
Shark Tank, exactly.
Yeah.
Or angel investors too. Angel investors is another one too, where you can go and pitch your idea to them, and they can give you investing.
Yeah. So I went to one just focused on cannabis, and it was pretty. That was a really cool experience because I just saw, in quick elevator pitches of maybe 5-10 minutes each, with maybe 5 slides each too. They just summed up why their company should be deserving of this investment and of this money, and it was really cool to see more suits and ties and sandals and beer at the event. That it kind of showed that this space is growing up, that it's becoming professional, and it's not just something that is a fly-by-night. That people were showing their 10-year plan for their hydroponic technology company. Others were promoting their edible-based tea business, that's just focusing on tea and coffees and not getting into anything but, and just having that niche focus. And then hearing that honest feedback coming from those VCs and cannabis consultants was also pretty eye-opening, because you just don't really see that on Shark Tank or Dragon's Den.
I wish you did. That'd be awesome.
Yeah,
wow.
that'd be the next one.
Yeah.
Couple more questions. One of the ones I wanted to ask you is the legalization versus the black market, with government control being in there, I think was a big question for me that I had. How do you feel with the government controlling everything now versus people getting it from the black market? What's your feelings on that and thoughts?
Well, I think what government has to do are a few things, and I believe they have to do same-day delivery. I think the big issue sometimes with ordering from an Ontario cannabis store or from your other provincial store, that can take up to 5 to 6 business days to get the cannabis that you ordered.
That's slow as a
That
drug
could be
dealer.
a problem for medical patients. That could be a problem for people, who just want to get their product right away, as opposed to waiting. And actually, it was around sometimes 3 weeks you were waiting for in October, when the rush was just intense, and people were, hitting up these sites almost like thousands every minute. That has leveled up to around 5 to 6 business days, and the Ontario government was going to investigate about, allowing same-day delivery companies to send them an RFP to see who might win that proposal. They nixed that idea for some reason around 2 weeks ago. Maybe they thought that same-day delivery would not be a good idea. I'm not sure why, but I think that's going to be an issue, because right now I can go to a dispensary, an illegal one, and get my product way quicker than ordering from the Ontario cannabis store. And I could go to a legal storefront too, but they don't have the range of what I want, including oils and edibles right now. That will change in October, though. But right now, the black market is winning in terms of the range of products, and also the pricing too. The pricing can be pretty heady for some people who aren't used to buying cannabis from a legal storefront, compared to their dealer down the street who probably sold them eighths for $30, and usually an eighth now will range into sometimes the $40 to $50 Canadian mark, which can be kind of alarming to some folks. I think government control over over cannabis compared to the black market too, has given more publicity to cannabis and given more education to cannabis. So I think that is a great part of what the government has done by having initiatives that educates people what cannabinoids are. And that's not something the black market is very good at doing, is educating its consumers. They're really good at, one-on-one, if you get there and you can talk to someone about the product. But in terms of your website, most dispensaries I know have terrible web presences and don't really even show you what's available or have blog posts on what cannabinoids are. But I think more LPs and more government sites are being proactive in educating consumers. So I got to give them kudos for being on top of that.
Yeah, a couple things we've noticed here with dispensaries here, the medical dispensaries, that they have sale days, and I tend to go on the sale days because you can get $40 eighths or half ounces for $80 sometimes of shake, and I'm a sale guy because I don't want to spend the kind of money that, like you said, on the black market where it's cheaper. Unlike Dob Boy here, who still goes to the back alley and gets himself some oregano every once in a while that he doesn't know.
Well, David just said that you can get an eighth for $30. So do you mind if I get your guys' number?
Funny enough, he retired.
Oh,
You can retire. Oh man.
He saw legalization coming, and he said, you know what, my customer base is going to be cut in half at most. It's just not worth it for me anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So now he's just focusing on school because he's probably not alone among the many dealers out there in Toronto. Seeing probably their customer base cut by a bit, if not by a lot, because more people are either being paranoid and wanting to go the legal route, or they feel like, hey, I could pay finally with a credit card from my own home instead of having to, go see my guy wherever he is.
Mm-hmm.
Even if you do gotta wait, 5 business days for that delivery to come.
You guys can use your credit card in Canada? Damn it, USA. Get your asses together and get it off the federal thing, man. This is bullshit. We gotta pay cash and cash only.
Yeah.
Sucks.
I actually would love to see, and actually this is a question for you guys. Did you see US, eventually getting a federal legal program happening with cannabis, or is that just a, it's got to go by state first before it can roll out, federally?
I honestly, I'm kind of stuck. I don't know. Like, with the way things are going, I feel like it's going to be really hard to get those last few, like, southern conservative states to get on the bandwagon.
Oh yeah.
And
Utah?
Yeah, like Utah,
Alabama.
like Texas, Alabama, like states like that. If they don't get on the bandwagon for, like, state legalization, I don't think we'll ever see federal. But if all the states get on board at some point, then I think we will. But I don't know how long that's going to take for those states down there to
At least
get on board
decriminalize
with
it. If they can at least get it decriminalized in those states, it will
Yeah.
help federally, because we need to get this off of Schedule 1 as our last podcast talked
Yeah.
about the Schedule 1. We need to get it off Schedule 1 when you have opioids as a Schedule 3 or
Yeah.
2, depending on the opioid. And cannabis is still a Scheduled 1 that we can't do any research or get anything on it. It's really hurting us here in the USA.
That's I think the big issue too, is that it's almost like a catch-22. In order to legalize it, you need more research to prove its efficacy for various ailments, but you can't do that research because it is Schedule 1. And I know that a lot of American researchers are envious of Canadian scientists and academics who are able now to conduct human trials with cannabis rather than mice or cell culture trials, because really that's where that's what the science community respects is double-blind human trials on what cannabis could do to the body. Otherwise, things are sometimes still more in the claims kind of department when it comes to working with mice or working with cell cultures.
I think another problem is there's just so much money involved in the opioid business here is just so booming that federally it might not ever happen just because the money that's involved in it all, and they don't want people to finally accept that marijuana is a good substitute. So I think that's another thing that has to be overcome, and I don't know if it ever will.
Illinois passed an opioid bill, which was good, to where people can get off opioids and get their medical card a lot faster and get pushed through the system a lot faster to get them off opioids, which was great for Illinois to do that. But we need to do this on a bigger level, because the opioid rage, I don't know how it is in Canada, but the opioid rage here in the United States is just crazy.
It's terrible.
It's definitely ravaged a lot of parts of southern Ontario too. We had a lot of education about fentanyl overdoses here for those who carried some of the that medication. I forget the name of it off the top of my head. That a lot of people are now carrying with them in case they come across someone who's undergoing a fentanyl overdose. So that is something, sadly, is part of the Canadian culture here.
Yeah, it's definitely huge.
You guys got one more question for David?
Yeah, I think a good one that we could kind of send our listeners out with is, like, just on a day-to-day basis, what are, like, some good things you think people can do to help change the stigma in people's eyes that are just, like, around them in their community, or on, like, a bigger basis, just if they wanted to promote things, like, through social media or writing? Just what are, like, some ideas you think that are good to get out there to help people change their minds?
I think if you're educated about the plant and you're kind of up to date on the science behind it, and you know about what ailments it actually can help alleviate as opposed to what it may alleviate, I think it's important to educate those who might be uneducated about the plant. And that doesn't mean preaching on a pulpit and, being that kind of annoying guy who tries to insert cannabis into every conversation, but being that kind of person who maybe will talk intelligently to a family dinner or to your parents about, what they might have been educated improperly about, what propaganda they might have ingested without knowing it. And you can also do that in a blog post, on your own personal website, on your own Tumblr page or LinkedIn post, and spread that on social media. Mm-hmm. And I think, thanks to social media's virality and its potential for virality, I think sometimes that might be a great route if that person is comfortable being a writer and laying those thoughts down on paper, or in a podcast or in a video cast there on YouTube. Sometimes going that route can be a great way to battle misinformation. But it's also, I think, important to realize that cannabis isn't for everyone, and that some people will have experiences and views that might not change despite all the education and studies you throw at them. I've noticed that myself with older generation Canadians, and sometimes that's a battle that you just can't win and that you maybe don't want to embark on because it could be frustrating, and also people just have bad experiences and they just don't find it, palatable to them, much like some people don't like alcohol. Heck, I don't even like tomatoes. So if you try to do a straight up raw tomato, as much as someone might sort of pressure someone to try a joint after 20 years of not, there could be a bit of a tension there that you really don't need to be there.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Awesome.
I got one last question for you, David. Can you give me Kawhi's stat line for tomorrow? A little prediction?
I'm going to go with 30. I think it's not a big game. He's going to come back, I think. He's going to go for 30, 10, 7.
All right, 30, 10, 7.
There we
book
go.
it. I want to see it.
Yeah, book it.
We'll give you a Go Raptors on that one.
Go Raptors, baby.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that.
David, if people want to follow you, where do they go? Where do people go?
Sure. So my website, where I also blog and have information about both my journalism and my poetry, is at davidsilverberg.ca. So BERGABM, all one word. My Twitter handle at SilverbergDave. Someone took my full name on orders. I have to be kind of creative with that. And on Instagram, I am just straight up David Silverberg.
Awesome.
Cool.
Awesome.
You got anything else you want to just shout out at the end? Let people know to check out.
I guess, my new book of poetry, for those who like science fiction poetry, I mentioned at the top, would be great if people want to buy that off Amazon, probably easiest for your American audiences. It's also going to be at some Barnes & Noble stores, but not sure how many, and the title is As Close to the Edge Without Going Over. As well, I mainly write for a news network that I write around 12 articles a month for them, called Cannabis.me, so I highly recommend people check out CANNVAS.me, which is focused on educating Canadians about cannabis in all its many categories, from science to the business side of things to safety and usage. And so that's my main gig as a cannabis journalist. I'm really happy to be aligned with the parent company, Cannabis MedTech, which really has gone all in on educating Canadians about it with maybe, feels like hundreds of articles that are up there now about cannabis.
That's awesome.
Awesome.
Oh, wow.
Well, David, we'd like to say thank you very much for being our first guest on our podcast on the Weedman 420
Oh,
Chronicles.
it's a pleasure. Thanks for having me on. I've had a great time chatting with you all.
Yeah, next, if you ever get in the States, if you ever come to Chicago, reach out to us. We'd love to meet you, take you out for a couple beers and for dinner or something like that. And we'd love to smoke out with you.
For you in Toronto, if you ever want to come here and ideally experience our fully legal
That's an invitation. We're on our way.
It's only 7.5, 8 hours up to Toronto. We drove it when we went up there last time, so maybe we'll take a road trip and come and see and come experience some of your ways of Toronto.
Yeah, sometimes there's some conferences here that you guys might be interested in checking out as as podcast producers and a way to interview some other Canadian researchers and cannabis specialists. So yeah, keep your eye out for a lot of interesting conferences that happen in Toronto and Montreal that focus on cannabis, because those are cropping up way more than ever before in Canada.
Awesome. Well, thank you again. Really appreciate it, and everything you're doing for the cannabis communities across Canada and into the United States and everything. Hopefully people are reading your articles around the world. We really appreciate this. Thank you.
Yeah, my pleasure, and I'll keep on checking out Weedman 420. You guys are doing a great thing there.
Awesome. Thank you.
Man, what a fucking great interview, huh, Dav?
He would be probably the first coolest David, and I guess I would have to take second.
Wow.
Yeah,
Damn.
it's very generous of me to let him have that
It is.
title.
Very humble.
I'll let him get that for like the next couple weeks.
You shoved that ego down your pants on that one, huh?
I really did. David will be in talks on the power rankings of David. We gotta get like one of those ghost people to talk to Bowie real quick too. We gotta get his input on the whole matter.
It was awesome though. He had a lot of good stuff to say. I'm glad we got him on the podcast. And now I'm ready to fucking smoke.
Let's smoke.
Ooh.
So this week we got Wild Cherry Cola. I'm gonna hit this real quick, so you guys can bullshit for a second while I do that.
This Wild Cherry Cola strain's brand spanking new.
I'm very curious about this because if it doesn't make me like see cool red and like black logos like the 90s Cherry Cola logo, like when I'm so that high, I'm gonna be pretty upset.
Now I really want some cherry cola.
Like
On the
yeah,
rocks.
yeah, on the rocks, like from Pappy's.
With ice? Is that what you're saying, with ice? You want cherry cola with ice? Are you a cubed or a crushed person? Shoddy.
I don't know.
Oh, now we just blew your mind, huh?
Yeah. You know those
Crushed.
I feel like just in regular drinks, I'm a cubed, but like I like to. This is gonna sound weird, but I like to eat crushed ice. Like I could eat ice all the time. You know what I'm saying?
Is that like one of those like hip and trendy diet like things?
Yeah.
Okay, you just sit
that's all
there.
I eat is ice.
Intermediate fasting is actually just eating ice.
But also that the ice from what is it, Circle K?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
You know what ice I'm talking about?
Yeah,
It's
there's
Crunch on
nothing
that ice.
there's nothing better than that crushed ice you get from a
Yeah.
good restaurant. Like little tiny cubes, like perfection. It's like it tightens in your plastic cup that you get from Circle K. That's just banging because you just shove it, and then you just take it off and you just chew on that ice all day long.
Unless you're Chick-fil-A, and then I'm only chewing ice because they put like 2% drink in there.
Well, especially somebody like you burner. You just get cotton mouth all the time, so you're probably chewing on it or sucking on it.
I drink
Which
lots
one?
of water there.
Are you a chewer or a sucker?
Chewer.
You're a chewer.
I know you're a sucker.
I do like
because
to
I
suck on some
finesse the
ice.
shit out of you. Haha.
All right, so this is Wild Cherry Cola from Revolution. We love these guys. They're awesome. They come out with a lot of good strains. It's an indica dominant hybrid. It comes from cherry lime haze and cherry hash plant numero uno. It is about 23.4% THC, and it's got like 0.1% CBD, so not really much.
Hooray for CBD! Hooray
Yeah,
for
at least there's a
CBD!
little
love that
something in there.
0.1.
I don't think it really does shit, but it's there. So we're gonna let this kick in a little bit, and then Dave hit us with in the papers.
So, in no way am I like a business analyst or anything, but
Obviously,
shut up, dude. I did take some look into like some stocks. Not in particular, just like, read a couple articles like I normally do because, again, not a business analyst or anything.
once again,
All right, we
obviously.
did it.
Oh,
Hey,
jeez.
leave me alone, guys. You guys are really rude to me today. It's because I'm the second coolest David on the podcast now.
That's why you're getting treated like you're treated, Dav boy.
Anyway, so marijuana sales are soaring. Marijuana stocks are not. And I pulled this out of a Barron's.com article by Bill Alpert. I quote him saying, "Since April, the stock of Curaleaf has sunk from $11.73 to $8.03. Green Thumb Industries is off 25%. Harvest Health and Recreation is down nearly 30%. Now, those are some big numbers. Again,
Yeah.
not a business analyst, but yeah. I'd be pretty upset if I was investing in those and saw that.
True.
Even though the industry is low, like stock-wise, marijuana continues to grow, not just because it's a plant. A Green Thumb, based out of Illinois, is set to generate more than 8 times its revenue of the state's medical sales now that legalization of marijuana in Illinois is set to begin early 2020. Medical sales in Illinois have been very good, nearly doubling since December. Shout out Weedman.
What?
The U.S. pot stock is absolutely crushing it on the earnings front. And this is from an article by Sean Williams. I read too, because, I thought I'd give you guys the best I could do. Wall Street analysts expect global sales to grow by 4 to 6 times what was generated in 2018. The problem I'm seeing here is supply chain issues in both Canada and California have wreaked havoc on their respective weed industries. In Canada, regulatory red tape in the form of a backlog of more than 800 cultivation, processing, or sales applications at Health Canada has dramatically slowed the supply of cannabis to dispensaries. Meanwhile, oversupply in Canada, coupled with red tape in licensing new dispensaries, has caused supply bottlenecks. Many of these supply issues will multiple quarters to resolve, writes Williams. So basically, there's an oversupply in some places, and that's causing kind of a problem in the stock world.
Yeah, David talked about that a little bit. He was saying how hard it was to get at first, so I could believe it. I'm surprised though. Well, I mean, I just guess that I'm waiting for places to like catch up to Oregon.
Yeah.
Because they're stocked up, selling joints out the door for like $3 or $4. Like,
Yeah.
So I'm just waiting to see places get up to them.
Well, get this. Trulieve Cannabis. Truly believe. It's a weird one to say. Anyways.
Spell it out.
Truelieve.
Trulieve.
Trulieve.
Bad radio, but
Like
anyways.
relieve, like
Yeah.
truly relieve.
This is such bad radio. I love it. Operates mainly in Florida, so they have 28 out of 30 dispensaries there. They're doing a great job on the stock market as well. Williams writes that Trulieve is supply chain from seed to sale. It owns grow farms and processing facilities. It sells its own product in its dispensaries, which means it's responsible for branding, marketing, and the breadth of production selection too. The company currently has approximately 170 different stocks keeping units for medical patients to choose from. That's a lot of different, strains of weed you can pick.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
I like their selection.
Mm-hmm. It's also responsible for selling 65% of all medical cannabis in Florida.
Damn.
And where? Florida?
Yeah.
So they got the fucking market cornered down there, huh, right now?
Well, what's interesting about them is they focus just on one state, and that's why their stock is doing so well. 28 out of 30 of their dispensaries are in Florida, so they're kind of just like capitalizing on Florida's market only and not worrying about, okay, I got to go over to Massachusetts, get hit that, and then I got Oregon and Washington. I got dispensaries out there that I got to worry about. And like what's hard for that is one of my previous in the papers was about moving that money because it's federally illegal. Banks don't take the money. So, like, trying to operate cross-country with marijuana probably is what's hurting the stock, because you don't have a bank. Trying to move that money hurts you because of all the shit that can go wrong.
That's why a lot of the cannabis companies are traded out of Canada right now, right?
Yep, a lot of them are. So, like, I got a question for you guys. Do you guys think that marijuana companies will focus more on single-state sales or go universal? And if they stay to a single state, do you think it's going to be kind of like a monopoly?
Well, Cresco Labs is, I think, in 11 states now.
Mm-hmm. They do an alright job for themselves.
Yeah, they're doing all right. I
know they're in
I'm
Florida
not
as well.
promoting their stock. I do have some stock with Cresco. It's fluctuating a lot back and forth between that $9 and $12 range right now. It's not really going crazy, but it's in flux to where you're looking 5 to 10 years out.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
Right now it's just so all over the place, like you said, because it's federally illegal here, so people are still not fully engaged in investing, I think, in cannabis stocks. My personal opinion, I think, once it goes federally legal in the United States, we're talking gangbusters where those stocks will start hitting $30, $40, $50 a share. I'm predicting myself between 2 to 5 years, but it has to go federally legal here in the United States.
I think so. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I think that's what holds it back a lot too, because the money, like moving your money, like that. It's just it doesn't look good right now.
Yeah.
In the future, if things go the way they're supposed, that we want them to go, it's a gold mine.
Yeah.
Well, here,
that's just my opinion.
Well, I'll give you it this way: if you would have bought stock in Microsoft in 1980 or in the 80s, like 84, I think, when they went on the trade market, if you bought 10,000 shares, you'd be worth about $5 million today.
Was there anything federally illegal holding back Microsoft?
Not at all. That's what I'm saying. But it started. Look how long Microsoft took to gain that traction to where you were making some money at it.
Yeah, I see where you're going. Like, things had to go right for Microsoft, like, with the use of the internet and how it evolved as it did.
Right.
And the niches that they made for themselves.
Windows 95 is what blew them up.
I think that's going to take... I think, going back to your question, though, for those stocks to hit that big like money point, it's gonna take them being across like the whole nation. Like they can't just stick to one state, I think, and get as big as Microsoft did. Like they're gonna have to be a cross country like company.
I think it only works like if it goes federal. But
Yeah.
like if you're doing state by state.
But there's still a lot of companies that are across in like different states right now, even though it's just legal in some states. Like I think dog walkers too, and like how you said Cresco. Like there's a couple companies that are based in Illinois, or not even based, just selling in Illinois, and they're selling in different states
right,
too.
like the Green Thumb. But if you look like the stock numbers, they just weren't killing it.
Yeah.
Yet.
I mean, sales for them for having 30 dispensaries in one state is probably great for them because they got the market cornered. They got the most dispensaries. They're probably bringing in a lot of money and stuff like that, which they can only put in their safe in the bottom of their house right now.
It's just weird to think that like the stock could be going down, even though they're selling so much weed.
Yep.
Yeah.
And it's just, I think, because of the federal.
Can we find out maybe next time? And I'm only thinking of this right now because I think the wild cherry cola kicked in a little bit. I'm feeling really nice.
I do feel nice.
Can you find out though? Do they have to pay taxes federally here in the United States since it's federally legal? Does anybody know that? I don't know that, and I thought I knew a little bit about cannabis. But that's a good thought. We'll look that up. I just want to know. I'll
find that out for next week. Sure.
Yeah, or I'll just post it on my story or something like that. But yeah, just to find out if it's federally taxed because it is federally illegal.
Or even if any listeners know, like please.
Shoot us a DM. That'd be great.
We're not experts.
We never claimed to be.
Well, we're experts on smoking the weed.
Yes, absolutely. But anything else about that article?
That's really all I had. I just, like even like the questions I asked you guys, if our listeners have like any input on it, please shoot me a DM. I'd like to talk about it. I'd like to learn more about it. And I'm sure there's some people who are like super into that like type of shit.
Because
you
we're
tell
all
me
about learning
all
and
that
growing.
inside and out, and that'd be so cool. Like at least just have a conversation about. Yeah.
I just read it.
I was like,
perfect.
Over here.
Yeah.
Well, that's fine. That's what we want.
Does a Google search. Attaboy.
They are paying them, but since the banks can't handle their money because it's coming from cannabis, which isn't federally legal, they have to pay their taxes in cash. So that's kind of a problem right now. So they're paying a fuck ton of money in cash. So they're like armored details coming to like pick up the money.
Millions. We're not even talking about like 5,000-10,000.
Oh, that's a lot of.
That's a lot of cashola, man.
Well, that's across. I think that
trucks.
article said it was from CNN. They're picking up like 2.8 million in tax money
overall.
Overall, I think, yeah.
Man, just wait till like cannabis hits like in Colorado hits about $55 billion a year in sales, and here once it goes recreational here in Illinois, and it hits about
sorry, they'll owe 2.8 billion in taxes to the federal
that's
government.
what I was saying. 2.5. That sounds low. $2.8 billion cash though. Cash green money coming from the other green. Coming from the other green tree. I wonder where that 2.8 billion is going since it's not getting documented.
Not to the fucking potholes I hit every day on my way to work. God damn it! Put the money to something that fucking matters.
Not to those schools.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. $2.8 billion is a lot of fucking money, and they're trying to slide in shit like that, and they're getting money from cannabis and not telling anybody about it. Man, I wonder why they're getting new jets and new cars and new houses out there. That's
if anyone wants to give me $2.8 billion just to see what I do with it, that'd be really cool. I'll videotape the whole thing.
No one wants to see you taking showers.
Damn it.
How you guys feeling off that bud?
I'm pretty relaxed.
It's feeling good. They said no one wants to see me taking a shower. That was rude.
Yep, of course.
So it's another Revolution strain, so I want to just tell them once again how good their fucking wrapping is. How it tells you everything. It's got the terpene profile on here, like strain properties. It like rates like how much of an indica hybrid it is.
Well, how much of an indica hybrid is it?
Well, it's just got like a line. Actually, maybe it's just to show you that it's a hybrid indica.
Is it it's the Weedometer. It's pretty cool.
It's like one of those temperature strips kind of color thing that looks like you take a temperature and it goes up as you get warmer.
But it's in between the indica and hybrid, so I think it's just to say it's like a kind of like the
pH balance shows you like what the level is.
You need some fucking pH balance stuff.
It's good, though.
You need an attitude check, buddy.
I feel relaxed. I'm talkative right now.
Yeah, my mind's pretty open.
But I could just lay back and kick it.
I'm going to after we record this podcast and Dob just stops being an analyst.
Hey, I said I wasn't an analyst. But
Is
you're
something
an
going on between you
asshole.
guys?
Hey, we're just having fun.
Yeah, we're just trying to have
Is there
fun.
tension?
We haven't hung out in a couple of days.
I know, it's been a while.
Yeah. There's no tension.
A little tension.
Just chilling. He's just tired.
Is Weedman not giving you enough attention?
He's tired because he just woke up. He was sleeping on the couch when I walked in.
I think he just didn't expect us all to so easily agree that David was a better Dave.
Ooh.
I think he
I didn't
thought
say
I'm
we
the
were
one
gonna
that
stick
brought
up
it to
for him.
attention.
Are
I
you
said
mad
I
at-
would let him have
Are
the
we
title
mad-
for a few weeks.
Are you mad that we didn't vote you Dave Dobbs number one? Dobbs
I
number
didn't say
one.
that looking for you guys to all love me. I said
think-
it as a simple
think-
fact. And I
And
think
we
now
just-
you are all just coming at my dome.
Are you upset right now?
Are you upset?
No, not at all. I'm high.
Yeah, I think I am too.
Man, that's a really good strain.
That is a good strain.
Yeah, Wild Cherry Cola Revolution Cannabis.
I was wondering earlier about like their like canisters. It's always like that baby blue on the front.
Yeah, that catches
I thought
my
that
eye.
would,
It's a
like-
good color.
Yeah, it's a good color. They usually see like red and yellow, like yellow pad
Mm-hmm.
and red pens get people's, but their coloring on there is pretty
Well, they're
good.
blue. Like blue, it always just makes me think it's indica, but like they do their sativas
Yeah.
on there. I think it's just always blue.
I
don't mind it. Just
I
made
like.
me think
We've
of it.
smoked a lot of their stuff, and I still think they make some of the best indica strains. It's pretty.
Yeah, they got some. Good
Oh
stuff.
yeah, that blackberry.
Oh, the blackberry kush.
We've talked about
Mwah.
that many
Well,
times.
don't forget that new strain we got too, the Spectre one. That's their new stuff. The blackberry web.
Oh yeah.
That's a different coloring because it's a 2-to-1 ratio. So I wonder if they're making their CBD color a white labeling.
Oh, that is a
versus-
white label.
Yeah, it is a white label. So
I didn't even think that was Revolution.
yeah,
My
so
dumb
that's
ass.
why. See, you didn't know
Yeah.
that. Yeah, but you see their color on their back. Their labeling's the same. They tell you the dominant indica sativa and all that kind of stuff. So, but shout out to Revolution. Anybody got anything else to say, Dav boy?
Yeah, I hope next time that we record you have a better attitude towards me.
Maybe depends. Polly.
This was fun. Hopefully we'll get some more good guests coming on the podcast soon. I think it was a good start, and hopefully our interviews just only get more in depth and we just get better at it. So stick with us. We're going to have some cool people on.
Shoddy.
Mm-hmm.
That was a good thing to say.
She's baked. You really wowed. You really wowed him on that one, Shoddy.
I'm just
was
intently
great.
listening. Like I always feel like I have such good things to say, and then I'm just like, I just want to listen to you guys talk.
Well, just spit it out whenever it comes to your mind.
All right, thanks for giving me the permission.
I didn't need to give it to you. You know what?
It's Pick on Dav Day.
Thanks for listening, everybody. Talk to you next time.
Yeah, I want to thank you all for listening. Don't forget to check us out on WeedMan420 Chronicles. That's our Instagram. Also check out our Twitter at WeedMan420Pod. And then check us out and shoot us an email, WeedMan420Chronicles@gmail.com. Once again, I'd like to thank David Silverberg. See, I'm baked. David Silverberg for coming on our show. You were awesome, man, for being our first guest. And then once again, everyone, puffing away.